Okay, well, it's official. We are live. Thank you very much for joining us today on the 80/20 Service Business Podcast. My name is Sid Graff. I'm your host. And today we have a very special guest. His name is Al Levi. And Al spent 25 years in a family-owned plumbing and HVAC business in New York. And he's going to tell us about that and tell us about the journey that he took to go from overworked and underpaid, my air quotes going on here, to having an organized, systematized business that it was reliable and repeatable, and most importantly, delegatable, followable. Somebody else runs the business. He exited that business. Now he's a published author and an accomplished coach, and he spends a lot of time apparently chasing little white balls along great big green lawns down in Arizona. So welcome to the show, Al. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the very nice intro. Yeah, I am one of those exceptions, though, Sid. I was making a load of money at a young man's age, and I was on a very bad path. As I always say, I was going to be a really rich dead guy, which was not my goal. And so I had to change stuff. And I was also lucky in that I came into an established business. My grandfather, my dad and my uncle had started the business out of my grandfather's gas station. So our business was born in 1936, and it's going on as of today.
Still going.
My two brothers and I were third generation. And the good news is the middle brother, a little bit older than me, is still there. And his son, my nephew, fourth generation, is there. Wow. And when you speak about systems, this is the true life of how do you pass it on. But I lived the nightmare of, I put out a fire, and I would wake up the next day to find out that fire had broke out again, put it out, and then again and again. It's always a cat chasing a tail, whatever you like to think of it as. But that was the life I was leading.
Wow. So at some point along that journey, and it's cool, it's a family business. It had already been established for a good long while before you were, helping steer the ship. But was there a catalyst, or what caused you to go, hey, wait a minute? Like, I'm tired of putting out fires. Like, there's got to be a way to prevent fires from happening. What do I do?
Yeah, as any good kid in their parents' business, especially contractors, the only way I got to see my dad is he would wake up in the middle of the night and take us along on service calls, which we thought was great. It was a lot of fun. He was not as thrilled about it. So when it came our turn, I came to understand it's like, you work all day and then there's a phone next to your head, and then boom, you're off to work again. And we were not a small company. We were 70 people strong, 17 million, but it was just this throwing people at the problem.
Okay.
And all that really tantamount to is we were trying to slow down the bus that was coming at us by throwing people in front of it. And so that was very bad. And we were a New York City union shop, just to make things a little more interesting.
Oh, yeah. Let's complicate it a little bit.
Let's make it a little more complicated, because otherwise life would be too easy as a contractor. So what I had read, a seminal book, and my good friend, who was your guest, Ellen Rohr, who was a very good friend of ours, a fellow contractor at that time, and our mutual great friend, Dan Holohan, industry giant in the heating business, and a very great guy, great speaker. Everything is phenomenal. But anyway, the two of them said to me, because they were watching what I was doing and how I was operating, and they said to me, look, you got to read this book, Michael Gerber's E-Myth, which had a phenomenal run in the late 90s. Yeah. But it's, again, by the way, in every Facebook group that I belong to industry-wise, it's taken on a life, because the lessons in E-Myth are so applicable to today, which was, here was my problem. What he identified was the thing I was missing, why things were so bad, and what needed to be attended to, and gave me no help in the how. But the why and the what were so powerful, I could figure out. And basically what he said is, if you're always working in your business and never on it, nothing's going to change. And that was the smack in the face I needed, not like Chris Rock. And so it was a case of I really needed this awakening to understand, especially I needed to be able to do. So I spent, while I was working, and I was fitting all the boxes in the org chart, which, by the way, we didn't have. That's another story. But basically what happened is I committed to creating the operating manuals for every box on our org chart.
Oh, wow.
And
And were you
so
doing this from scratch, or did you
I
have
was
a
from
guide?
scratch, no help,
Okay.
because it really didn't exist back then at all.
Yeah.
And basically what I did is I always say it's great that there's no videotape, but I would run a service call and then I would turn to the side to the driver's seat, of which there was nobody there, and go, this is what I did on this call. And I would make bulleted notes. And then I would sit with the accounts payable person, accounts receivable person, the CSRs, the dispatchers. And I took a year while I was working to create just the outline for the skeleton, if you wish, for every box and what goes on. And here's where we want to get to. For the 80% of what goes on in those boxes, not the 20% weird. And when we were talking before, Sid and I were saying there's two types of 80-20 by me.
Yeah.
One of it is 80% of what goes on in each of the boxes in your day-to-day life in your business. And how well do you handle the 80? Because if you can, as I experienced, manage the 80%, the 20 weird is not your problem.
Correct.
And so the other part to this is when I worked with clients, as I do for 20 years, and now the program's been online for 5 years, basically, one of the cautions that I always speak to is stuff's going to come up and you go, let's put it in the manuals. And the answer is no. Until you answer the question is this an 80% going to happen over and over, or just a weird 20, let it go? Because even though they're digital, people think they could just keep adding pages upon pages of procedures. And that actually makes them less effective because people can't repeat it. So that's really good. And I do love the part that you talk about all the time, which is 80% focused on the 20% that matters. So if you guys will be honest with me, and I know all of you will be, you don't have systems, because I didn't.
Right.
We just had really great people. And one day, really what happened is I went in and told my brothers and my dad, and I was the youngest brother, by the way. I went in and said to him, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sick of being a hostage to my own employees.
Yeah, no kidding.
And they go, yeah, we feel the same thing. What are you going to do about it? And I go, I don't know right now, but I'm going to figure it out. And that's where we set on to do this, creating the manuals. Now I had to hire somebody, that great friend I told you, Dan Hollihan, because he fortunately said to me, Sid, he goes, I know you, Al. I go, what does that mean? He goes, you're going to close the door to your office. You're going to sit down and type this whole thing out and come out like it's the 10 Commandments.
Right.
Good luck trying to get that into a New York City union shop. So I said, well, you're so smart. What would you do? And he looks at me and he goes, I'd have meetings where we bring all the people together, the CSRs, the techs, the dispatcher, because they interact and affect each other. And let's have the meetings and let's come up with procedures. And I go, great, you're hired, because he was a professional writer. And so it was great. You know, we spent about $150,000 in today's money. And people always ask me, how long did it take to pay it off? 2 years.
Okay.
2 years. And here's why.
Yeah.
We had a horrific callback rate. Go to a call back. Tremendous loss of money. Think of a bathtub full of profits that are waiting for you. We had a drain wide open.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let me ask you this.
That was one of the big things.
With the callback rate, I mean, had anyone before this taken time just to calculate what's the cost of a callback?
You know, we had not. We just knew it was bad. And we also knew how bad our insurance issue was.
Okay.
Because the real Sioux City is really located in New York City.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
Everybody's willing to sue you. So there was a lot of these reasons. Plus, you can't go for new money if you're always running back to take care of your old jobs. That was one of the big things. The other thing is we were able finally to take young, willing people with no skills and get them to be willing people with skills to occupy all the boxes, primarily the techs, but also every position. Accounts receivable, accounts payable, all of those things became possible and doable. And that's how we were able to pay it back. Okay. You know, even the other thing said, I didn't know what I didn't know when I got done. Right. And what I mean is I didn't know all the steps along the way, how to get buy-in the right way, how to, you know, keep it in the culture. There's a lot of things that I've shared with clients over the years about how to, because think of it as climbing a hill. There's a process to it. So if you were going to climb a mountain or whatever, it'd be nice to have a trail guy with experience.
Yeah.
And that's really what you need along this journey.
Well, and with that, so we're going to shift into your book and your coaching, the 7 Power Contractor. But with having a trail guide, it's really important to I live in Montana, and right around us there are all these mountains, and there are a lot of beautiful hiking trails. And the ones I enjoy most are the ones that have already been made. Like it's well marked. You can see this is the path ahead. You don't have to guess. You don't get to a wall of brush and go, I wonder where to go now, and hack your way through. Like, don't make it up on your own. Follow somebody that's already done it. And thankfully, like yourself and others have not only taken this is what you need to do, this is why you need to do it, but they've gone, this is how you do it. So, I mean, even just in the brief kind of introduction of our conversation, you talked about the org chart. I would love to know what's the value of an org chart. You talk about processes and systems. And then a key point that most people overlook is like, how do you roll those systems into your existing team if you have one without causing a mutiny? So I'm sure these kind of flow into the process or the steps that are in your book. So could you do that? Like, number one, what's
the book I wrote is called The 7 Power Contractor: Running Your Contracting Business with Less Stress and More Success. And I had already been writing for a magazine just like Ellen has, same one, Plumbing Channel. And I've been writing, and I had all these articles already put together, and I had been out consulting for a number of years, and I realized it was time to make a book. And so I hired an editor. Her name is Alina, who's helped me with a lot of things. And she goes, you have 200 articles. Why do you need me? I said, well, imagine 200 of my kids sitting in an audience and they're all going, pick me. And I said, I would not write a book. It would end up being a ransom note. I need somebody to organize this. She goes, well, what's the founding principles? I go, 7 powers. That's what I teach when I do one-to-one consulting, which I no longer do, but it's planning power, operating power, staffing power, sales coaching, marketing power, financial power. Now, the good news with one-to-one clients, I had Ms. Ellen Rohr to handle the financial and the sales coaching, which is the reward programs we put together. Yeah. But she was the financial person, but I was really in charge of planning, operations, staffing, sales, marketing. Those were my 5 really strong suits. So that's what I talk about in the book. And I share a lot of the things, but one of the things I said also to Helena, my editor, I said, if a contractor can't read this because it's not 8th grade level, and you can't read it in 4 hours, it's too long. So it's the hardest thing, Sid, to make a book smaller. Right. It's easy to make it fat and worthless. I told her the best books I've ever read in business are typically 150 pages or less. Yeah. Because they really know what they're thinking about. One of my favorite books is Who Moved My Cheese? Okay. Which people always write off. And it's like 40 pages, but it's the most brilliant 40 pages you'll ever read. As a matter of fact, I don't keep much above my desk, but I still have the rules. There's the rules. How to read the handwriting on the wall, which came within the book about, moving the cheese. Yeah. It's that powerful a lesson. So the coaching programs or the steps along the way that I talk about, that's why there's these 23 video lessons in the program. There's a workbook to work along on my side. Okay. So as we climb that journey, and for those who buy the bigger version, all access, not only do you get all the manuals that cover all the boxes on the org chart, the way I think of the org chart is box org chart. It's like a bingo board. It's the boxes it takes to run your company. And then the goal is to cover each of those boxes with its own manual. Again, after the 80, not the 20 weird, to cover them so that you can improve, like you mentioned, the existing staff. Because here's what staffing power is about. These 3 things. Find the holes in your existing staff because frankly, they've been trying to hide them from you from the day they showed up at an interview. Okay. Have you ever been in an interview where you go, so say, do you understand plumbing? What's the last time you did some rough-in plumbing? He goes, oh, I do it all the time. I've been doing it since I was a kid. Now that may or may not be true. Just like a bookkeeper, I go, Sid, so you know QuickBooks? Do it all the time. Sure. So, yeah. That's till we find out when they sit at a desk or they're out in the field about what they do and don't know. Yeah. So that's the first thing is the manuals, believe it or not, is a relief to most of them because even without having to expose it, now they know a system that they're supposed to be following. Okay. So that's why it's for them. The second one is what I mentioned about is hiring new quote unquote experienced people. you ought to find out what they know and don't know during the interview process. But then there should be an orientation period. My family was so desperate at one point, Sid. By the way, all this is much funnier now. It was so desperate. No, we used to appreciate when people would give us 2 weeks notice.
Yeah.
And sometimes we would get a 1 week notice. And sometimes the truck keys would be in their truck and we would be looking to go, is Sid still here?
Yeah, where's Tony?
Yeah. Where'd they go? And so we hired in desperation.
Yeah.
And so if you came in and my brother Marty, who was the inside guy, didn't really do any of the outside work, he nicknamed, in good New York sarcasm, he called our hiring process the mirror test, MIRRR. Fog the mirror, you're hired, because we were desperate. Yeah. And then when you finally showed up, we were so desperate, we literally threw the keys at you and said, go have a good day. We didn't realize what we didn't realize is there's a recruiting, hiring, orienting. And that is a piece we were missing. Then always ongoing training. And here's the last piece we all miss: retaining. The assumption is they're on the team. But you can know right now in the Great Resignation and what's going on in the labor market, that was always a myth that they're always on the team. But now that myth is just exploded.
Yeah, for sure.
So the third part of staffing power is taking young, willing people with no skills and have the systems that allow willing people to become great at whatever position it is. In our particular case, years ago, before it became fashionable, we said we offer careers, not a job. And we had an org chart that demonstrated that, one, and we had the training that would take you up that ladder. So there was a reason to stay with us.
Okay. That is so important, because most of the small business owners that I know or have known, they hire out of desperation. They're like, oh my God, we need a body. Does he have a pulse? Okay, you're going to do great. Don't worry about it. Just get in there. Yeah. And then, then when disaster strikes, they're surprised. But the bigger issue is what you're talking about, is retention. It's like, how do you keep them there? And as business owners, a lot of times you're so focused on your own goals and your things and your growth that you forget that other people have goals and growth, and they want to, and if you can show them how to see themselves with you for years as a career, not as a job, they're not an afterthought, they're an integral part. How do you make them feel valuable, or how do you help them see their purpose within your organization? Was that part of your retention?
Actually, what I would start with, retention being the fifth step. Yeah. The better you do the first 4 steps in a never-ending fashion, you have a much better chance at the fifth step of retaining. And so the better I recruit you, and what people, the part that you mentioned is so good, Sid, is that most of the great owners that I work with, because they had to have money to bring me in, but the reality is they were great marketers, but their focus was only on new customers. And I said, whoa, take that energy and what you already know about, you have to have a budget for marketing, and apply it in this way, which is you are recruiting that young, willing, no skills, or even experienced if you need them, and then hoping that they're willing, so that you have a process for this and getting that in. So that's the bigger you go, the wider at the top of the funnel, the better your chances are. And certainly there are way more willing people with no skills than willing people that are also well-trained. Yeah. Even if they were, the chances of them being well-trained to your system are about 0. you have to train them your way. So we gave that up years ago. Okay. We stopped hiring retreads. And again, it's not that we wouldn't ever take on somebody who was experienced, but they became the exception, not the rule. In some ways we did it, believe it or not, Sid, because periodically we wanted a new skill set. Okay. And there was a reason to go outside our company and just stop the inbreeding because everybody was created with our own, giant mindset. It's great. The culture was so much better. I have to tell you, not only from myself, but pretty much for every client that I worked with when they got in this planning, operations, staffing, program, especially the staffing about being able to create their own people, they experienced the same thing that I did, which not only were they not hostages to their own employees, they actually came to love to go to work with these people because they were willing, 1, and 2, they were providing them a career that they knew no one else could do. Got so many great stories. Actually, my franchise that I was in with Ellen, and Ellen's still there. The general manager there, he was working in a mailroom. He had already had 11 jobs by the time he showed up. And he was willing to take less money to come with us because we had a career. Now he's general manager. He stepped up every one of those boxes because we had the way to help them climb the ladder. And he's not the exception. He's really the rule about how to do this right.
That's great. I want to ask you this, in the 7 powers. So you mentioned you're not coaching people individually now, but you did when you were actively coaching, or just what's your experience been with what's the most common Gordian knot that a business owner needs to start untangling? When you come in, you've got these 7 powers, you got planning, operations, sales, et cetera. Which one's going to move the needle the fastest? I'm sure it's individual to a degree, but there's usually
it is and it isn't. Sid, what I was already told by my friends. I actually went to all my friends who in the consulting business that were contractors, and I asked them when I was going through this career. I go, tell me what you hate about consultants. And frankly, it was a very long, and there were words that even as a New Yorker, I had never heard before about consultants. And so I made it a bit, my point to not be, any of what that is.
Okay.
But I had real systems to bring to them for each of those 7 things I rattled off.
Yeah.
Now, when I was doing one-to-one, I started with planning power because I already knew they were like me. And what I mean by me is, there was a time in my life when I was talking about it was just so stressful. And by the way, I was, 50 pounds bigger than I am today.
Wow.
And so I was eating my stress, let's just say mildly. Yeah. And so I believe that there were 7 million things I needed to master, or otherwise this business would be great with it, should be running. And it wasn't until we finally created the 7 building blocks that I realized, no, there's 7. Now, those 7 things have incredible depth to them. But those are the 7 things. And by the way, it's not just for contractors. I've worked with real estate management companies, a commercial photographer. Pretty much every business needs this foundation, if you will. And the type of people that I've worked with are really 2 clients is how they broke out into is either they were small, industrious people, typically, owners who worked days, nights, weekends, and they found out they ran out of, days in a week, weeks in a month. They just couldn't clone themselves. And now they needed these systems if they were going to move ahead. Or great marketers who blew up their company in a very big way, tons of sales. The problem is every time the phone rang and they couldn't handle it, it was gasoline to a fire. So they needed, believe it or not, the same systems, the base here. So planning is one of the ways that does, this is your master project of not only projects, but habits. How good are you at steps of delegation? How good are you at the 4 steps of corrective action? And yes, there are projects go up here. The problem for owners, which was the problem for me years ago, was every time I spoke to a friend, every time I went to a seminar, every time I watched a webinar, there was another great idea, and I'd be rolling all these things out, halfway back. Nothing ever really got done. And now, of course, it's worse. I mean, I don't know how many Facebook groups I belong, industry ones.
Sure.
And, there's no shortage of great ideas out there. The problem has always been with stuff online is, do you know if you're speaking to a genius or an idiot? So that's part of the problem. So you do need a filter.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would share with is, does it fit into the system? So what I always talk about in the 7 powers is, at least it gives you a system. So if you say to our car enthusiast and you want to build your own car, would you do a Toyota, frame and then a Honda engine and a Hyundai seats and a, GM, no, the answer is no, it's not going to work together. So when you pluck stuff from all over the place, it's not integrated.
Yeah, it's duct taped together.
Yes, duct taped together to make it work. So the planning is where, in my opinion, is where you need to start. And later on, I get to leadership. So I'll tell a quick story. Is that after I did planning and all these other things and things started to come under control, I would always do leadership as my last step. How to set goals and get on the same side and make it real and all these other things. And every one of them loved that. And they asked me, why didn't we do that first? And I go, when I arrived, you were in a pool about to drown. Yeah. Now is not the time to teach you how to swim.
Yeah. You go first, we're going to stop the bleeding.
Yes.
Then we'll figure out how to, prevent, get you on a better diet program or whatever.
Yeah. Put on a tourniquet.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I would love it if you would do this. You alluded to what I wanted to ask you to do is give us a snapshot of life before systems and then a snapshot after. So you talked about every day you put out a fire and you wake up the next day to find out that that fire was back, there's a new one to put out. But then when you exited the company after 25 years and it's still going, like I would love to see that, because most of the people listening have experienced the fireman syndrome,
Oh yeah.
but they're working toward, like, is there going to be a day when things actually run well and smooth? And like, I'm not like, I could go on vacation and turn my phone off for 2 weeks.
Yeah. I can share a quick story.
Yeah.
Basically was when, technology started to come with cell phones and the rest of it, we thought that was great because it was freedom, but we didn't realize, no, it wasn't. Now there was no escape. But, I would be on vacation with my wife and the phone would be ringing. They'd be asking me questions because, stuff that I had to like untangle the knot. And again, we were not a small company.
Yeah.
I turned to her and I said, listen, for the next 2 years, I'm going to be around even less. Now that's really great when you have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, but here's why you need to know this. I'm going to put the systems in place. I'm going to train the people correctly. I'm going to start with willing people and get them trained my way. In 2 years from now, we're going to be on a beach somewhere, and this is not going to be happening. I tell you, Sid, I don't know why I picked 2 years, but it was 2 years to the day. I was sitting on a beach. We finished up the vacation. I turned to my wife and I go, do you notice anything different? She goes, what do you mean? I go, did you notice my phone didn't ring for all the time we've been on vacation? She goes, wow. It was life. So I want to encourage you that it is absolutely possible. And there are many paths to success, but one of them that I feel is always tentative. If you think you're going to find the great person that's going to fix all the mess, that's not likely to happen. And what happens if they're that great and God forbid they miss the bus while they're crossing the street? Bad for them, but bad for you. So I wanted to do, and what I said to my brothers and my dad at that time, and to their credit, they allowed me to do it, was, we have great people in broken systems or no systems, and they overcome them each day. Why don't we have great systems and see how far good people can go?
Wow. What a perspective.
Yeah, that really changed my life in a very positive way. And what I'm most pleased about, it's really doing. And in the online program, which is about the manuals, and the next program up is all staffing. Okay. So it's mirroring those same things. And because of the way that I've set up the videos and the workbooks and the rest of it, you basically get Al. But I will share now that some of you may have cringed at that, but you basically get Al. So I'm going to tell you what it really comes down to. It's very funny. I had a guy in a workshop. There were 12 guys, and one of them I knew was struggling because I checked in with them after the workshop about the manuals. And Helena and I said, you know what? Let's just have access to the program, the online program. He does the online program for like 2 months, and he calls me up and he goes, I want to tell you something, Al, but I don't want you to be upset. And I go, well, okay, what is it? He goes, I like the online program more than I like being in the workshop with you. So I said, okay, why? And he goes, because in the workshop, when you speak or a question's asked, it's like you open up a fire hydrant on me. Yeah. When all I wanted was a glass of water. And he said, now I can watch the videos over and over. I can go through the workbook over and over, and I can get this at a pace that I can do in a way that I enjoy. So it was funny. I laughed, of course, and it really does make sense because I had heard that from my consulting. Now, the difference when I was doing it with consulting, they could call me up and I had remote support and they go, whoa, I'm kind of stuck here. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess with the video teaching, they can press pause. There you go. Hold on a second, Al. Let me get that. Let me write that down. Well, I want to make sure that we know how can we get in touch with you, or how can we follow you? You've got 7 Power Contractor. Where can people go to learn more, to get your book, to start down the path of systems, or to accelerate their systemizing path? Yeah. So it's the number 7 powercontractor.com, number 7 powercontractor.com. go there. There's a load of information in all my blogs. And as I said, I've been writing for a very long time. And there's a lot of the questions you have that I can answer right there for you. If you go to the products, you'll see, the book, which is sold through Amazon. And it's in Audible because guys that I work with, they're stuck in trucks and they don't have time. And a lot more people are using Audible as well. So that's another way to get started. And also you can see this product I'm talking about, the manuals, and you can see everything on that, pretty much on that page. And soon to be introduced will be the staffing program that mirrors exactly what I did with staffing. So that's the best place. There's a chat feature there. If this sounds interesting or you have a question, just chat me. It comes to me. I answer my own stuff. I'll be back to you. And also, by the way, I offer a free 30-minute call to anyone.
Oh, good.
Anybody who wants to reach out. So right on that page, if you chat me and say, I'd like to get together and talk, I'll send you the easy steps to do that as well. It's my privilege and my pleasure to do so. Okay.
So go to 7powercontractor.com. It's the number 7.
Yes.
And learn what you need to learn, like get the overview. There are some really cool testimonial videos on there as well. And then everybody can get the book, which I really recommend, as well as learn more about your courses. And then just chat with Al and go, are you on the golf course right now? What are you doing? Hey.
Yeah, Tuesdays and Thursdays you might find hard to book.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us, and especially thank you for sharing some wisdom. The thing that, I mean, as I'm approaching, I'm planning for retirement. I don't feel like I'm approaching, but I go, people that have 25 years in business and wisdom to share, if they don't share it, we're missing out. So I'm thankful that you've documented so much of yours and you share it so willingly. I really appreciate that. And again, thank you for joining us and for your time here today.
Thank you, Sid. I appreciate the opportunity as always.
All right. 100%.